I don't have an elevator pitch, but this is something I've been doing for about 2.5 years now, to broadcast every single scientific activity that happens in my office, which includes the expression on my face when I'm having amazing scientific discoveries, as well as all the code I'm writing and the social media sites I'm browsing and everything like that.
Right. So it's basically a webcam plus screen capture.
Yeah, pretty much the same sort of setup you'd see on a site like Twitch TV if you watch any live streaming like that.
So so Twitch is insanely popular for people wanting to watch other people play games, which is one of those things that befuddled me when I was younger, but then I totally get it now because it's just mirror neuron.
Yeah, I'm really into it.
You watch Twitch?
I had watched Twitch before I started this. I sort of like the whole slow TV movement as well.
What's slow TV?
Like just watching a person performing an activity.
Like a natural state. Like not trying to perform for you, like they just do stuff.
Yeah, I used to watch a guy he was trying to set the world record for Mario 64.
Oh.
And he would play the game again and again for hours on end. As soon as he'd make a mistake, he would reset it. Sometimes he would talk out loud. But I like to have that on in the background, just for a little bit of noise, having somebody else sort of in the room with me working hard at something.
It's like an ambient. Yeah, I've seen those Mario ones. There's this guy, Seth Bling, who does these awesome Mario hacks, and he like live broadcasts on Twitch when he's like attempting or practicing them, but then he later edits them into like a 10-minute, here's my highlight reel.
Yeah, I mean, this stuff is not entertaining. You wouldn't want to watch a movie, but it's kind of something you can have on in the background as a bit of a distraction.
I see. So it's just like I'm just practicing playing or whatever. Yeah, because that guy or some other people, they like, it shows his face on the bottom. It shows him Marioing, attempting his trick and stuff. And then when he gets it, he gets like really excited, and all the fans get super excited, right?
What I do is that, but for academia.
Right. So they share in the triumph.
I submit papers and they get rejected again and again and again. And then when they get accepted, you can see the expression on my face. That during that eureka moment, you'll now be able to see what that actually looks like for a scientist to have that.
Right. And have you, do you have an idea of your audience engagement? Is it billions of people like on Twitch, or, do you have ideas about that?
Yeah, I do have a view counter. So I know how many people are watching. It's a low number.
Right.
Right now it is 3 people.
Okay, let's actually go to the screen.
Well, I guess you're one of them. So
yeah. I'm gonna go to share our screen. So this is actually a webcam. Well, it's lagged, but so you see on top is us, right? Because we're facing my laptop on the side, and on the bottom is your 2 monitors. Is that right?
Yeah.
And is that resolution viewable for people to read?
If I scale up the text a little bit, it's readable. I think you can probably read my code on the right screen there. If you full screen the window, but you wouldn't be able to see my emails on the left. Things that are meant to be private still generally stay private.
So it's like actually you don't have to purposely hide it. It's just like stuff is small enough.
Yeah, I mean, some things I do purposely hide. If I'm entering grades or something, it's easy to just shut off one of the monitors. I mean, if you scroll down a bit there, you can actually see there's just below the
web page. Hold on, let me. Okay, so I'm scrolling down the web page.
Yeah, you can see there's a view counter on the right.
Right, so 3 viewers.
Track in real time the number of people who are currently watching.
And then what is this right here?
Well, that's my tenure clock. It's the countdown until the period where I ought to have gotten tenure or not.
So you don't want that to go negative.
No, I'll remove that and replace it by something else when the time comes.
By either a celebration clock.
But you can see on my website there's a lot of open science initiatives, if you like.
So tell me about that. Yeah.
So for instance, I have all of my student evaluations for my classes up there, which are a fun read. And if you scroll down papers section, I put up all of the the code and the data set, and also the reviews that the paper got, including the rejections. And it's pretty surprising how much people actually like to read some of these things. I mean, these funny things are some of the most visited pages on my website, like the student evaluations especially, are downloaded way more than any of my academic papers.
Interesting. Why do you think people like reading the student evaluations?
Well, I think, like with the webcam, it's a side of science that people just haven't seen very much. I mean, most students, they've written their own evaluations, but they've never seen what the professor's perspective on student evaluations look like. Or they don't know whether their own evaluations actually square with those of other people. Even, other assistant professors have probably not seen very many of their colleagues' student evaluations. So I think people are just curious what these things actually look like.
Right.
And certainly students use them to decide whether they should take the class or not as well. And it's the same with reviews of papers. Most people have not, they've seen their own reviews and they've seen papers they review,
right?
But they don't know, say, what their own colleagues' paper reviews tend to look like. Even your lab mates in your department, you would rarely see their reviews.
Right. I guess like if you're a grad student in a research group, you might ask for your fellow students' reviews informally, but to forward you their email, that's the most you might do.
Yeah, and I think in the same way, like the reason I have this massive number of 3 viewers is because most people don't really have a concept of what a professor's life consists of. What does a professor do all day? I don't know how it's portrayed in the media, but are they sitting there reading papers all day? Are they writing code all day? Are they responding to emails all day? Or are they just browsing Facebook all day? Nobody really knows.
Right. And I guess on the Facebook point, do you feel like having your stuff live broadcast keeps you on task and like not distracted, or do you not care anymore? You just do whatever you do?
Yeah, I mean, that was part of the reason I created it in the first place as well. It was a period of my life when I was procrastinating more than ever. It was when I just finished all of my job interviews and didn't have any offers yet. So that was
you started before you became a professor?
Yeah. So while I was still a postdoc.
Okay.
It was a period of high anxiety in my life. So I wasn't getting much work done, and I thought, okay, well, this is a project I've had in mind for a while. And
I see.
Maybe it'll give me something to do, and it'll maybe stop me from procrastinating so much once I've set it up as well.
I see. So you set this up as a postdoc who finished interviews before you got offers. That's the waiting game. And how long did you have to wait? I mean, how long was that agonizing phase?
Oh, I think the agonizing phase is a good 6 weeks or something. But yeah, I think if you've ever worked in an open plan office or something like that, you know how you can become a little bit self-conscious and maybe you do work a little bit harder because other people are watching what you're doing, or at least you're more conscious of what work you're doing. But that doesn't last for very long.
Right.
You kind of just adjust your baseline for
like a social norm.
How much slacking off you're willing to let other people see you doing.
Right. Well, and if other people are slacking off too, then that could be a compounding effect if everyone's slacking off because you're all just watching Hulu or Netflix on your computer.
Well, I can't see what the people watching me are doing, so I don't know if they're slacking.
Yeah, they right. But in a normal office, you can. Yeah.
When I first started it was very effective. Like, let's see, okay, there's 2 people watching. I better do some work.
And then but this is during the phase where you didn't really need to do much work, but you still wanted to do stuff.
Well, yes. I mean, for all I know, one of the people watching is somebody who's going to decide whether they're going to give me the job or not. So they should see that I'm hardworking.
Right. Or I guess you could just play a loop where you were hardworking. You record a loop and just play it back again and again at all hours.
Certainly. But yeah, I mean, nowadays it's a bit different. I don't mind if people see me browsing Facebook, but for instance, when I teach classes and students start bothering me outside of office hours, I'll say, look, I have this webcam set up. You should visit this before interrupting me. If you can see that I'm slacking off, it's always office hours.
Interesting.
And that really motivates me,
To not slack off.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to get interrupted.
If I know that as soon as I open up Facebook, somebody could just start knocking on my door and I'm on a balance to meet with them then very hard.
Interesting. And this is a setup for when you're in the office, right? But you spend most of your work time in the office, like you have a routine.
Yeah. So I thought about doing it at home as well, but this is not a popular suggestion.
All right. And then you have, so it's also, I guess, what about when you're meeting with students? So how does that broadcast dynamic work?
I mean, they know it's there. I think they adjust to it fairly quickly.
So these are like students for research. I guess there's a whiteboard, so you guys get they can kind of see you work at the whiteboard.
I mean, they certainly use it for, say, early morning meetings where maybe I haven't arrived on time. They can check my webcam. So he's not here yet. I'll wait till he arrives and then.
The panda cam.
When I first started it, I did have the microphone captured as well, so people could listen to what was being said. That didn't last very long. People didn't like that at all. Nobody was willing.
People were self-conscious about it.
People were very self-conscious.
Right.
Not that we were talking anything too scandalous, but people did not want a casual conversation just being captured.
Yep. Recorded, even if it's not recorded, it's kind of weird.
Yeah. So that immediately got switched off, and it's just the video that they hear, which I think nobody's quite so sensitive about protecting. And if they are, of course, I turn it off.
Right. So I guess even if a student comes in for office hours and wants to talk about a private matter, really the sensitive thing is what they're saying, not the fact that they're like in your office, unless they want to keep that confidential, unless they want to, they're self-conscious about people knowing that they're visiting you for some meeting.
I mean, of course, I disclose that I'm doing it. And,
right.
There definitely exist people who do not want to even have their image captured.
Sure. They can just easily turn it off.
That's fine. I can turn it off. Or if I'm, if it's interview season, I turn it off because not everyone's interviewing publicly.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. Did we turn it off when I was here? I don't remember.
I'm sure I offered.
Yeah, but I was like, whatever at that point. At that point, it was like my seventh one. I was like, whatever, it's fine.
Yeah. It's very, very low risk.
Yeah, it's like, well, we'll see what happens. Well, at that point, I already had a cog-sci offer. So this is, for context, and this is the computer science and engineering department at UCSD. And then I had a cognitive science offer, which I ended up taking, and then I was interviewing in CS. But I was like, all right, I'm probably coming here for cog-sci at least anyways. So it's fine to be on camera.
People know you're around.
I don't have to wear a mask or anything. So this is really interesting. I mean, it's one of the things I thought about in grad school was this kind of idea of situational awareness, of like experience of doing research as, say, a grad student may be less isolating if you kind of are somewhat aware of what other people are working on, or whether they're working, or what their life is like. Because when you're an undergrad, you all have the same context. You see each other in class. You live in the dorms together. It's all it can be really isolating at the research level. So.
Yeah, I mean, I had that sense too as a student, which is part of the motivation. I mean, I was at Stanford at the time. I don't know if this is a Stanford thing or an American thing or an academic thing, but you get this impression like everyone around you is just working like crazy nonstop, and there is no slacking off in their lives.
That's the perception you get from other people.
Yeah, that's the perception you have, and there's no way of disproving that perception, really.
I could disprove that to you. I was at Stanford as well at that time, and I could tell you that is not true.
Yeah, I mean, you read these productivity blogs about academia, and they say, I get up at 7:30 in the morning, and I do exercise for 1 hour, and then I have consideration about my tasks for the day for 30 minutes. And you can be a bit incredulous about this.
5 a.m. cold shower.
And maybe some people are like that, but I knew that I wasn't, and I was incredulous that everyone else was. I think this is a good way of just putting it out there. I don't need to signal about how hard I'm working to anyone. You can see exactly what fraction of my day is slacking off versus doing deep work versus being asleep at my desk.
Or eating a sandwich. Do you eat in here ever?
I do. If I'm eating a complicated meal, I'll usually turn the camera off. I still have that level of self-consciousness.
Interesting.
It was funny actually when I did get a job offer from UCSD, and the department chair sent out the announcement to the faculty. I was midway through eating a pizza on camera, so everyone started coming to our website, and then I felt very self-conscious.
And how do people know to come to you? Because other people need, like, you told other people.
No, I mean the chair had links to my website. And
people came to your website.
Everyone started pouring in.
Came on. Nice.
8 p.m. in the evening when I was in my office eating a pizza.
Very nice. I like that. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because we were, what years were you at Stanford?
I guess 2011 to 14.
So I guess that was a 3-year postdoc?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess we overlapped slightly then because I was there from 2006 to 2012. So 2011 and 2012 we would overlap. But I was actually at Harvard visiting for one of those semesters. So I was, fall 2011 I was gone. So spring 2012 I was there, but I was pretty much a lame duck because I was just writing and writing the PhD grind and finishing up my thesis. So I didn't really see many people, but I could definitely tell you that there was a lot of slacking going on everywhere around the building. So it's funny that you have this perception.
Yeah, I mean, I felt that way. Like,
you felt that people were slacking, but they were giving the impression that they were working all the time.
They never talked about the fact that I was slacking.
Right.
I felt that I was as productive as other people.
Right.
Although they created the impression that they were working much harder.
And how do you think they created that perception? Let's say you're a bunch of grad students or postdocs in offices and library. How did you feel that perception? Because I'm curious about that.
I think people just don't talk about their slacking off activities very much.
So they just don't mention.
Yeah. And I was in an office by myself. I wasn't in a grad student room with lots of people slacking.
I just remember that. I mean, this is bringing back grad school memories because we were in the same building. I would have a 2-monitor display, and I would always have like Hulu or something playing, like Conan O'Brien on one screen, and I was like kind of working or like running my code and stuff. And it was just funny because like randomly my advisor would just walk in like behind me. I mean, I don't think he really cared, but it was just funny that you just get startled. Someone like walks in behind you.
No, I have a similar setup. I'd always be watching MasterChef on the, something that occupies like 10% of your brain.
Yeah. And it was like fine and everything, but
especially if I was doing some mindless activity.
Yeah, or like waiting for code to run or something.
Yeah. And I assume most people do that.
Exactly. So I think getting back to this whole idea of if everybody, how would you imagine a world where, say, we're in the computer science and engineering building here, and there's like hundreds of grad students, postdocs, professors, research staff working in this giant, modern building, either in a shared offices or, faculty and staff often have their own offices. How would, the dynamic, can you imagine, work if everybody had your broadcast set up? And, we could all see what everyone was doing all the time.
I think for most people, life wouldn't change that much. I mean, for me, I think it hasn't really. Mm-hmm. The way I work has not really changed as a function of the fact that I'm broadcasting it. Maybe a little bit, like I said, at a few specific times. But I think people would adjust.
Right.
I think you'd also find that most people's broadcasts would be very, very boring.
Right.
They simply wouldn't be around most of the time.
Yep, that's right. That's true.
And it's the same with mine.
Yeah, and the brainstorm I had in grad school about thinking about a system like this, not necessarily a video, but tracking people's activities on their computer, what they're doing, or voluntarily broadcasting. Like I'm currently, just some kind of status update, like, oh, I'm currently trying this MATLAB thing, whatever. I was thinking one of the potential benefits is that you would get serendipitous learning or help, right? Because the idea is you have this giant building at any school, right, at Stanford, UCSD, wherever, with hundreds of people hacking and working on computery stuff. Someone in another floor on a different corner of the building might be able to help you with something, or might want to discuss something with you, but they have no idea what you're doing.
Yeah.
So they can't ever find you. And the one way that traditionally this has worked in offices is you have water cooler conversations, or you would have gatherings where you informally run each other and over snack or beer and stuff, and you'd be like, oh yeah, I'm struggling with this, and then someone's like, oh yeah, use this library. And I want to try to facilitate that in a more organic way. That was what I was thinking about the whole recording thing.
Yeah, I don't think the content that I'm recording creates much of a dialogue.
Sure.
Like nobody's ever emailed me and suggested some change to my code that I'm writing.
Code review.
Or commented on some paper that I'm reading.
Mm-hmm.
The level of commentary I get tends to be pretty silly.
Yeah.
Some people will email me and see that I didn't respond to their email right away. And
they would email you.
They'll see it. They'll see that I've opened the email, but that I then closed it and started doing something else, even though it had the word urgent in it.
You move it in a trash bin. Right?
I just hit archive.
Annoying people bin.
Annoying
people email bin.
People will get annoyed about that.
Like colleagues that would do that, or students?
No, never someone. I mean, people I know have done other silly things, like send me lewd images in email so they can watch me open them and have a laugh.
Yeah, I can see that. Check out my latest paper, and you click the link.
I don't know that there's yet been a deep exchange as a result of content that I'm broadcasting.
Yeah, and I don't know about, when you're watching Twitch or those live broadcasting, what are the level of comments that people would write on those sorts of sites?
Yeah, I think fairly silly.
Yeah, it's more just kind of camaraderie or just, mob, whatever.
Yeah, you can imagine doing something more collaborative with a setup like this where people, you could do remote pair programming or something like that. I'm not sure it's quite at that level yet.
Right.
Partly for the fact that you can't read, and maybe I don't want you to be able to read exactly what's actually on my screen.
Right. So it's more like a gestalt of here's what I'm doing, kind of like I'm typing code, or I'm editing a Word document, or I'm talking to someone on the whiteboard.
Yeah, and you can almost, not to sound overly pretentious, but it's almost more like an artistic statement about how science ought to be done very openly.
Right.
Yeah, of course you can't actually reproduce my scientific experiments or critique my code based on watching this thing. But it's sort of, we'd like to imagine some ideal world where you could do things like that. We ought to do science as if anybody could be watching our every move. And you should be mindful of the code you're writing. Like, you should think, am I implementing this baseline in a way that's fair to its authors, or something like that? How would I feel if they were watching me implementing?
Right, they're watching you and criticizing you in real time.
Yeah, and of course that's not quite achievable.
Right.
But we should act as if it were achievable.
Right. So it's sort of like it's both a kind of an artistic statement, and also a way to frame your mind into working as though this was a future world, in a way. Yeah. Like, to approximate that.
Yeah. Where, there was a full trace of what I did. And, imagine a world where you could just really trace the scientific process from start to finish and understand all of the things a person did, rather than the sort of very ad hoc way we have of constructing a paper right now.
Yep. Yeah, my interest in this is a lot in the learning angle of how do you train, say, a new graduate student in your research area, right? The way to do it is you have them read your papers, and you have them start on a project, and you work really hands-on with them, and you're like, oh, this is the trick you do. You should index this column in the database because this is the good trick, or use this library. But if somehow they could capture in one possible future, they could capture what you did throughout your PhD and your postdoc years to produce all these papers, and provide some format where a grad student can kind of look into it and peer in and see your code and see things, or see your thoughts. Like, they could sort of, in a way, be shadowing you throughout all these years. That's ideal. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope at the very least my graduate students will see that I have a commitment to open science.
Right.
And that they should repeat that commitment. Maybe the downside is that they don't imagine me to be some incredibly hardworking superhuman, which was something sort of these Stanford professors managed quite well. So I don't know that it inspires them to necessarily work harder. It might inspire them to, adhere to the principles of doing science very openly.
Right. Yeah, I actually, my first round of job talks, this was from a faculty, this is 2013, so this is the last round is 2016. My first round, I actually, in kind of future visions of stuff, I kind of talked a bit about this idea of if you could trace things and structure it and annotate these traces, we could perhaps use that for future mentorship. Because one of the projects I did in my PhD, this burrito project, was tracing what people are doing on their computers and their activities and their provenance of their files and versions and stuff, and presenting a summary kind of interface for yourself to reflect on.
Yeah,
that's kind of where I got my interest in this whole thing you have as well.
Yeah, of course, this is very ephemeral.
Right.
It doesn't actually get captured anywhere. Sure. I'd like to record all of this, but I just haven't bought the hard drives yet.
Yeah, this is a rig you set up and that does its job for now. But can you? So I guess to wrap up, we got a few more minutes to wrap up. What do you imagine as as either a concrete possible future of this sort of open science project that you want to do, or if you don't have time to improve on this setup and you're as happy as it is, what is a hypothetically awesome future setup if you had infinite time to do?
Yeah, I mean, a hypothetically awesome setup would be like something like, I don't know, an IPython notebook for all of science, where you could just trace back and sort of step through the entire scientific process and say, oh, what if I modified this bit right at the beginning? How would the outcome differ? And then people who are getting into science could really track how the scientific process is done. Whether I actually want this, I don't know. It may well be that the level of transparency I'm offering now is as much as I can possibly handle, and I don't really want people seeing my personal emails and correspondences and things like that, and just making an artistic statement is enough. Right.
Yeah, there's also the issue of curated, whether you want to, I mean, there's the record everything, expose everything, there's the do nothing, or there's the record everything, but make an easy way for you to curate so you can produce a summary for others, right?
Yeah.
Because that would be, so when I was, two thoughts related, this is all Stanford related, funny enough. So there's this, one of our colleagues at Stanford, this is Suhindra. I don't know, do you know Suhindra? He was Monica Lamb's student, and he was a systems person coming up, but then he switched more to HCI, and his thesis project was actually this mining email archives in order for personal reflection. So he built a system where you could take your email archives, and then he did a bunch of natural language processing and clustering, whatever, and present you with this interactive browser interface throughout your whole history. And his case studies involved, I think I was one of them, of using it to reflect back on your scientific collaboration type works, and other people did it for personal memories and stuff. And when I was writing my PhD memoir, I think partially used his system, but also just dug through my old emails. But it was really curated. Right? I wanted to remind myself of how my scientific process worked throughout my 6 years at Stanford, and what project I started, who I communicated with. But I wasn't about to expose all my emails for everyone to see. It was just using that as a raw material to write my story. Yeah,
I mean, I'll probably regret in the future that I didn't record this thing, because it would be sort of fun to look back at it in 10 years' time and
I'll record all your videos.
Yeah, look through the moments when I was working really hard on something, or when something finally worked, or maybe even when things didn't work for a long period of time.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's important to also present science as being the good with the bad. Most people would look at a professor's academic webpage and just see, okay, it's a bunch of flawless masterpieces that arrive one after the other.
That's absolutely right in my case.
Deadline.
That's right. Yep.
But it's obviously not like that. There's this, as you've written about, there's this very long grind to get to this process. Much of it is very boring, and a lot of it is not successful.
Yeah, and I, on this recording front, I would encourage you to, record at least for your personal archives, however much is practical. I mean, if you're generating terabytes a day and you don't have a data center, it's kind of hard. But one thing I realize is that it's never too late to record, because sometimes in the past, in some projects I've done, I've deployed systems online and I don't have really good logging, and I'm like, should I bother to do better logging? Because I'm like, I already have years of data without good logging. Why do I want to start now? But I think the answer has always been, you should always just start, because as time goes on, you'll forget the fact that those past years, the logging wasn't good, because you'll just build up good logs from the future. So it's okay if your first 2 years on this project wasn't logged, because if you're going to be here for 5, 10, 20, 30, whatever years in your career, that's just like noise. So I would encourage you to log for yourself if you can.
Yeah, hopefully I'll get around to it. But then maybe one of the people watching is already recording it for me.
That's true. You're gonna have a site in China somewhere that just has Julian excerpts that just they do like weird super mixes of you like looking silly. Alrighty, thank you so much. We'll go offline and chat more.
My pleasure.